Hey everyone, welcome to WASD 20. My name is Nate, and this is How to Play D&D. Previously on How to Play D&D. Halen had been acting strangely as of late. I rushed down the stairs. It looks very disheveled. Books and papers are strewn across the floor, and an imp appears above you. So I am going to attack it with a fire bolt. Oh no! The imp cries out and shrieks. You see a narrow staircase going down. I crack it open and try to peek in and see what I can see. You see Halrin chained to the wall. You also see a humanoid creature with gray skin. Alright, so we will continue right there with Shaunus standing at the door, peeking in, observing something deeply concerning, to say the least. And the player might ask at this point, would I know what this creature is? Now this is another case where the DM might make you roll, but as the DM in this case, I'm going to say, in your studies, you do remember reading about doppelgangers. Aha, so I'm starting to think that perhaps my master acting strangely lately was in fact an imposter, as these doppelgangers, I would know, are able to shapeshift. I think before I attempt to do anything, I am going to cast Mage Armor on myself, which is one of my first level spells. So I'm going to mark that I have expended one spell slot there. Okay, so we can read the full description of Mage Armor in the book. So here we have, you touch a willing creature who isn't wearing armor, and a protective magical force surrounds it until the spell ends. The target's base AC becomes 13 plus its Dexterity modifier. So that is going to put our armor class up to 13, because we have a Dexterity modifier of 0. So that's better than 10, and that will help. Now with a lot of spells that last for a long time, they are concentration spells. This one actually is not. But just a quick note on a concentration spell, like this one over here, you can only cast one of those at a time, and while you are casting that, while you're concentrating on that and holding that effect, you could cast another spell, but it can't be another concentration spell. In addition, if you take damage while holding a concentration spell, you'll have to make a Constitution saving throw. More instructions on how to do that on page 203 in the player's handbook. Another thing that you're going to see in the book here, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it right now, you can read more about it, is the components: verbal, somatic, and material. In this case, I need to be able to speak, I need to be able to move my hands, and I need a material. And in many cases, a wizard has a spell focus. In my case, it is a staff that can replace a lot of the materials. So I would just be holding my staff in this case, and that could act as a replacement for a lot of the material components. Alright, so as I cast Mage Armor, I grasp my staff and I mutter some words, and I feel this magic just surround me with this force of energy protecting me from outside attack. Alright, now because this spell does have a verbal component, I had to mutter to myself a little bit. I'm going to have to make another stealth check to see if I am noticed. The DM says, make another stealth check. And I rolled a 7. As the DM here, I'm going to say that the DC on this probably would have been a 15. This is a little bit challenging to not be heard, and perhaps the spell itself even makes a little bit of a noise, a humming of some sort. My stealth is plus 0, add to 7. I'm going to be noticed here. And so the doppelganger turns around, and we roll initiative. So I've kind of, for the doppelganger here, combined the stats for mage and doppelganger, assuming that a doppelganger is kind of the race that one could become a mage, and this one has learned some magic. So I've taken some liberties here, which a DM is also always able to do if they want to kind of make up their own monsters and create their own creatures and enemies. But I usually like to write them on a separate note card just to keep handy. Sometimes I'll take a picture of the stats like I did with the imp here and print it along with my DM notes. But in this case, I just wrote them down on this note card. So the doppelganger's initiative is plus 2, so that makes it a 13, and mine is plus 0, so I'm at a 3. 13 versus 3, he goes first. And on his turn, the doppelganger is going to use his polymorph ability to try to confuse our player character here by changing into another humanoid creature. You see before your eyes the doppelganger's skin begin to change, and he turns into your master, Halrin the Wise, down to his clothes and everything. And he speaks to you in Halrin's voice, and he says, "Shaunus, you should not be here." Shaunus is aware of the trick that's being played on him here, and so he is not going to be fooled so easily. He steps into the room. Shaunus is going to walk up here, and I'm going to try to, I'm actually going to throw my axe, because I'm not sure I can take this guy by myself. I'm going to try to throw my axe to free the hand of Halrin. He is gagged at the mouth, and only one of his arms is currently chained to the wall. So I'm going to try to throw my axe and hit that rusty chain that's holding him. So while you could make this a skill check, I decided to give the rusty chain some armor class and hit points. So the armor class is going to be 13, and the hit points are going to be 5. I also had to go ahead and record the weapon damage here. This was not a weapon I started with. I picked it up in the previous room. So I went ahead and looked in the book for what a hand axe would be, and you can see I have -1 attack bonus and 1d6 -1 damage. So we roll to see if we hit, and we get a 7. -1 is going to give us a 6, so that is definitely not going to be a hit. I am not going to be able to break that chain, so the DM might say, "Your thrown axe spins through the air and knocks into the wall away from the chain, and clanks to the ground. Halrin looks at you wide-eyed, clearly scared of what could happen here." The doppelganger looks at me again, and in this case, I'm going to have the doppelganger cast another spell, and it is going to be the suggestion spell. So for suggestion, we see that this is one action. The range is 30 feet, which is 6 squares, so we're good there. It has a verbal and a material component, but the material component is going to be replaced by actually Halrin's staff, which the doppelganger has stolen and attuned to himself. And this is a concentration spell, so it can last up to 8 hours. And it says you suggest a course of activity, and I'm not going to read all the detail now, but it has to be somewhat reasonable. For example, you can't ask someone to kill themselves. It has to be somewhat reasonable. It's a charm of sorts, and what the doppelganger is going to say to me, the doppelganger looks into your eyes, and it says, "Shaunus, go up to your room. I'll deal with you soon." If you don't have to make an attack roll, the target does get to make a saving throw. In this case, it's a wisdom saving throw. And because we are a half-elf, we do actually get to roll with advantage against charm effects. So, in this case, I actually get to roll 2d20s. The advantage mechanic is really nice in D&D 5e. You roll 2d20s and you take the best. There are also some cases where you might have disadvantage for certain things, and in that case, you roll 2d20s and you take the lowest. Alright, but 2d20s, and we're going to take the best. I didn't write this down on my card, but the spell save DC is going to be a 14 for this. So I'm going to roll, and hopefully I can make it. It is wisdom, so I do get a +2 on it, and here we go. Alright, so I got a 16, +2 is 18, so my highest one is what I take, and that is going to be good enough for me to resist. So I glare back at the doppelganger, and as I feel it trying to probe into my mind, and I shake off the effects of this charm. Panicking, not knowing quite what else to do here, I am going to go back and I'm going to cast a spell, Chromatic Orb. The Chromatic Orb is one action, the range is 90 feet, I'm good there. The components are verbal, somatic, and material, and it has a diamond worth at least 50 gold pieces. Alright, so we can read here on page 203 a little bit about the material components, and it says here that a character can use a component pouch or a spell casting focus in place of the component specified for a spell. In most cases, I would use my staff as the spellcasting focus, but it says here, but if a cost is indicated for a component, a character must have that specific component before he or she can cast the spell. Also, if the spell states that the material component is consumed by the spell, the caster actually has to provide that. So, yeah, in this case, for the sake of casting this awesome spell, I'm going to say that I do have a diamond worth 50 gold pieces, and so I pull this thing out of my pocket, and this magical orb of Lightning forms. With Chromatic Orb, you're actually able to choose what kind of energy. It can be acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison. I'm just going to say lightning because it sounds awesome. And you make a ranged spell attack against the target. Now here it says a ranged spell attack, so that means I am going to have to roll to hit. If the attack hits, the creature takes 3d8 damage at any type you choose. Now in this case, I am actually going to try putting this spell in a higher slot, so it is going to use one of my second level slots instead of my first. I'm going to cast it at a higher level to try to get a little more oomph out of it. I really hope I don't miss. And it says here, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of second level or higher, the damage increases by 1d8 for each slot level above first. So I'm actually going to be able to, if casting this at second level, use 4d8 damage. My spell attack bonus is +5, so I'm going to be adding that to the roll to see if I hit first. Ooh, nice. I got an 18 + 5 is 23. The Doppelganger's armor class is a 13, so I easily hit this thing. And this ball of lightning just is hurled toward the Doppelganger. He is going to take 14 damage, 14 lightning damage, as this ball of lightning is hurled at him, and he kind of shakes with the force of it as this lightning surges through him. Alright, it is now the Doppelganger's turn. Now, the Doppelganger, I've decided, is going to be casting a Fireball spell, which is a pretty huge spell, and it's going to have some very negative effects for our young wizard here. So the DM says,
"You see the Doppelganger's staff glowing red as he points it at you and mutters some words. Suddenly flames leap out toward you and completely engulf this entire area."
Okay, so Fireball is a 3rd level evocation spell. It has a range of 150 feet. We are good there. It says a bright streak flashes from your pointing finger to a point you choose within range. Each creature within 20-foot radius has to make a Dexterity saving throw. A target takes 8d6 fire damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. Alright, so he's going to do some serious damage with this spell, and I'm not sure if Shaunus is going to survive this. So first, let's make our Dexterity saving throw. Alright, we got a 4. For Dexterity, we have a +0, so that is just a straight 4, and that is not going to match the 14 that we need. So I'm just going to take 4d6, and I'm going to roll twice here. 15, and that's 12, plus 3 is 15, 16. So that is 31 fire damage.
As the fire engulfs you, you manage to make out the panicked visage of your master through the flames. His eyes are wide, and through his gag you hear, "Hmm, hmm!" Moments later, the pain overwhelms you, and you crumple to the ground, vision fading to blackness.
Alright, so I kind of rigged this encounter to be very hard, because I wanted to talk about death in D&D. In general, it's probably not a good idea to have such a difficult enemy for a single player like this. If Shaunus had been able to free Haelrin, he would have had a very good chance, actually. Making success, however, pretty contingent on one thing happening is a really bad idea. It's always a good idea to give your player options. So, if he can't free Haelrin, perhaps he can use the environment in some way. Perhaps you give him some kind of advantage, or give the enemy some kind of clear disadvantage. It's always a good idea to build in multiple ways for your character to succeed.
In this case, that was really the only way I could see it working out well for Shaunus, and he failed that, so now we get to talk about death.
So firstly, for an enemy, if they drop to 0 hit points, it's up to the DM, but usually that's going to mean they're just dead. The DM will say, they're dead. Now the DM could in certain cases decide that's not the case, or you could also decide that you want to try to keep someone alive by dealing non-lethal damage and just knock them out as a player, perhaps to interrogate them or to take them prisoner or whatever. But for a player, when they are knocked down to 0 hit points, they fall unconscious, and in this case, we had 17 hit points. We took 31 damage, which puts us down to negative 14. Now in D&D 5th edition, you don't have negative hit points, so we actually stay at 0. However, if the damage remaining was more than our maximum hit points of 23, then we would automatically be dead. Just dead. Game over, roll up a new character, or call it a night. However, in this case, it's not, so we are still at 0 hit points, we are unconscious, and now we move into the realm of death saves. The way that this works is on every turn, each round, when it's my character's turn, I have to try to make a save. If I roll a 10 or higher, I get to put a little check in the successes. If I roll a 9 or lower, it's a failure. Once I get to 3 successes, I am stable. I stay at 0 hit points. If I get 3 failures, I die. If I roll a 1, that is a critical failure and that counts as 2 failures. If I roll a 20, that actually counts as 2 successes. I could more quickly become stable. So in this case, let's say that the doppelganger has no plans to kill me. Maybe he wants to take me prisoner too. He has been trying to get all the magical secrets he can from Haelrin the Wise, one of the greatest wizards in the land. He and his fellow doppelgangers have perhaps even infiltrated the city and are beginning to take it over slowly, very quietly, subversively. So let's say that he wants to tie me up, but he makes no effort to save me. He's going to let me die or take me prisoner. In that case, I would have to make saves. So let's just say that, in a normal round of combat, you're going to have multiple players, perhaps, and every round is going to be a little more obvious, and you'll know when to make your saves. In this case, it's not going to be so obvious, but I'm just going to go ahead and make some saves. Now, if he decided to keep on hitting me as I was down, he wants to try to kill me, in one attack, he is going to have to do 23 damage in order to kill me. Every hit, however, is going to count as a failure. I still get to make my saves, but if he was hitting me, it does rack up the failures pretty fast, and the chances of me dying would be pretty great. Alright, so anyway, I am going to roll my first save. I roll a 2. That is a failure. Next one, I roll a 17. That is a success. Again, this would normally be done in my turn in combat, but the combat is over here. An 11, that is a success. And here it is, the final roll. Will I live or will I die? 10. I live. Alright, so I am tied up and I remain unconscious. And perhaps now the doppelgangers are going to be trying to use what I know of Haelrin's work to try to get more information and ultimately more power to take over this city. Well, this adventure did not have a very happy ending, but I want to thank you for joining me anyway, and hopefully you had a good time, and you learned some things about the rules to get a little more comfortable with them so you can run better games, play in more games, and all that good stuff. Make sure, again, you check out my website, wasd20.net, where you can find my beginner's guide to D&D 5e, and, of course, make sure you're subscribed, because there's going to be lots of good future D&D content on the channel. All right, everybody take care. You'll see me again soon, I'm sure.